What's up guys, Nic Von Rupp here. I'm a professional big wave surfer and welcome to my catch up. For me, surfing comes from a very unusual way. I mean, none of my parents surf, none of my family has any relationship to surfing. But I remember my dad had just moved from the States to Portugal. I was born and raised in Portugal, and I was living in Oeiras at the time, which during summertime has no waves. And my dad put on like the Beach Boys at the time, and you know, there was like surfing this, surfing that, and I was like, I instantly felt that warm feeling like, surfing, that, I mean, what is this? This is cool. So I asked my dad and he's like, yeah, surfing, you ride waves. And I had that instant warm feeling like, man, I want to surf. I want to try this thing. And I was about like, this is my earliest memories. I was about 4 years old. I only got to start surfing when I was 8, when I moved to the coast. And instantly, you know, like it came from like being in the water, being on a bodyboard, getting up on a bodyboard, and all of a sudden I'm on a surfboard. And I was really lucky to be to enroll into João Macedo Surf School, which is a great friend and a team member, which we ride at, Nazare these days. And, I was part of his surf school from the beginning, and he was kind of the guy that, my parents wouldn't let me surf at the start when I was 9 years old. They thought that surfing was dangerous. Surfing has like a negative connotation where, surfers were junkies. And it was really João that came over to my parents' house, sat down on the table with my parents, and gave him the talk like, hey guys, Nic is talented, Nic loves to surf, Nic needs to surf, let him surf. And it went on from there, I never looked back. It was like the biggest passion I ever had, just being in the ocean, being healthy, surfing at all times. Not because I wanted to be a professional, but just because I had so much passion about surfing. And that's how it like took off. As I said, for me, what drew me to surfing wasn't the dream of being a professional surfer. There was no such thing as a professional surfer, like that was so far away, I mean, I just became good because I practiced a lot and I really loved it, like I didn't really care about results. Obviously, I do think competitive surfing is important for the evolution of a surfer. And if you want to become a professional surfer, you have to you have to have that competitive influence, because that's what's going to make you a good surfer. And at the end of the day, like whether you're going to be a free surfer, big wave surfer, competitive surfer, having that base of wanting to progress and becoming a good surfer is really important, So for me, my path, like obviously there was no such thing as becoming a big wave surfer. I really enjoyed it ever since, the good waves, the chasing swells, the getting barreled. I always loved that, but that wasn't really, that's a real millennial kind of approach to surfing, I feel like, back in the day when I started surfing, it was all about competitions, and that's what I did, I started competing, I started getting my results from a national level, I started winning contests, I started being one of the best, and then on a European level, I was vice champion of Europe in 2007, and like the sponsors started appearing, the structures started appearing. I was able to go to Hawaii, I was able to go to Australia, and I was able to go to Indonesia, to Tahiti, and that really shaped me into the surfer I am these days, I feel like, my passion has always been big waves, slabs, free surfing. I always felt like, there was so much more to surfing and the professional surfing than the competitive side. And that's, that whole other side of surfing is what really drew me over the years, like I remember, there was this one particular 2015, the huge swell came to Kandui, the Century swell. And I remember watching the footage. I had just lost against guys that are probably 10 times worse than me, surfing 1 foot waves. I mean, so much. I put my heart and soul into this. I get to Balito and I lose first round, and I look at the videos and I see like guys like Billy Kemper, Nathan Florence, Koa Rotma getting 12-foot barrels at Kandui. And it really got me thinking, like, what the hell am I doing here in Balito, surfing 1 foot waves, losing against guys that are 10 times worse than me? If I could be in Kandui, getting the barrels of my life and probably being one of the best guys out there, you know, like what's the point? So that was the shift, you know, after that, you know, that was around June 2015, I said, you know what, this shit, whatever people think, I want to go my own way, I want to do what I want to do, and that was it. I never looked back. I canceled the QS for the season. I had just gotten second in the ISA World Surfing Games, which is the organization that brings athletes to the Olympics, and you know, all my coaches were like, what are you doing, man? Like, are you sure you want to do this? I'm like, yeah, man. Like, I mean, you know, whatever. I don't even care about sponsorships anymore. I just, you know, if my career finishes in the next 3 years, I want to do the way I want to do it. And that's how it really took off, you know, like I let the competitive scene go. I started focusing more on Nazare. I started focusing more on places like Ireland, Indonesia, and focusing more on continent. And you know, the numbers are up there and the people are stoked. And you know, when everything comes together where you're really doing what you love, you know, that's when you excel. That's when the best of you comes out. And I feel like the last 5 years have been you know, pretty amazing. That's a good question. I mean, I remember being very afraid when I was a kid. I remember being afraid of the rocks. I remember being afraid of the waves, you know, like, but, you know, like, when I was growing up, João, you know, he was like the crazy guy. He always took us in a different direction, you know, like, you know, it wasn't all about surfing small waves and cascavéis. It was really like stepping outside of our comfort zone. So whenever we stepped outside of our comfort zone, João would feel the joy, and that would obviously filter down to us as well, you know? So that's how like my dealing with my fear really came to life, you know, like that addiction to, it was really a mindset, you know, like whenever you feel fear, you don't hold yourself back. You take a step in front, you don't take a step backwards. And that comes from a very early age. There was a moment in a particular time when I must have been like 9 years old, and you know, I was just starting surfing and there were some rocks, like small rocks on the left side of the beach. And I remember I was so afraid of those rocks, you know, and I wouldn't, like, these rocks were like shallow on the water, you know, you were in like not even knee-deep water, and I remember walking on those rocks and I was really afraid, you know, but I remember João coming up to me and really like walking me through, like, okay, like walk on the rocks, feel comfortable on the rocks. That's like a life lesson that I've taken all through my life, you know, like it's, okay, you're afraid, but you kind of step outside of that comfort zone and move forward, and that's kind of like that pleasure, that you know, that fear pleasure, you know, that feeling a challenge and really enjoying to overcome that challenge and move forward. Yeah, I mean, that's really, people say it's your surroundings that shape who you are, and nice. In that way I really feel it, you know. It's, you know, like my upbringing really shaped me into the surfer I am today. The way I've stepped up my career over the years is always looking outside of my comfort zone, you know, like the little seed that was implemented as a young age, walking on the rocks when I'm afraid, is something that has always been in me. And, you know, I'm always looking forward to the next thing, you know. And obviously what popped up in my mind was, I want to ride, you know, I'm good at surfing slabs on a 6'4", 6'6". I want to step it up on a 10.0. I want to be, you know, I want to apply what I've learned in slab surfing and apply it on big wave surfing. And that was kind of it, you know, like I really focused. I started paddling a lot on bigger boards, training a lot at Nazare. I got some big bombs at Nazare. I started being a part of the whole paddle movement in Nazare around 2015. We rode some of the biggest waves over the course of those years. But my end goal was always get familiar with the big boards and step it up and go to Mavericks and ride one of the best waves ever, the Mavericks. And you know, the time came, and then I finally got to Mavericks, and you know, like this perfect week started stacking up, and I went over to Stretch's factory. He gave me a board he had shaped from Nathan Fletcher, hand shaped, a 10-1. He had hand shaped for Nathan Fletcher to go left. And he said, here you go, this is yours, you know? And I was like, holy shit, this board looks amazing, really thin in the tail, like amazing, amazing board. And that was it, you know, I was staying at Powerline. The guy kind of guided me, you know, on the lineup. You got to sit here, you got to sit there. And, you know, I had a couple of really heavy wipeouts at Mavericks, but I always like, you know, I could envision myself going left. And then in the last day of the trip, this last pulse of swell came in. Perfect conditions, 20 period swell, 20-foot waves. And there was Lucas Schumbu, Nathan Florence, myself, Manny Rosano, sitting on the left, trying to get barreled. All of a sudden, like a big set comes, we get the set on the head, and I was so in the zone, you know, like everything, all the preparation, you know, like the true feeling of focus, preparation, and opportunity, you know, came together, and this wave came up, and I like dropped down. I was riding a 10-1 at the time, a huge board, and I knifed it, I pulled in. Once I see that huge black hole, I'm like, what the f? I lift my arms, and I'm like, ah! I couldn't believe it that I could finally get myself into that black hole, and I come out and kind of fall backwards, and I'm like, ah! Screaming, I couldn't believe it. And I mean, that's really what set off my big wave career, you know, like that kind of spiked it, you know, like it wasn't about 12-foot waves anymore. It was about 20-foot waves and above. And it just took off from there, you know. Mavericks really, like, people were calling it like a historic swell, historic ride. It was up for Ride of the Year at the WSL Awards. It gave me a wild card for the next year big wave tour. And that was it. I was a big wave surfer. I was a baptized big wave surfer from there on. And obviously, like, Nazare started playing a huge role. Nazare is a different beast, you know, it's just people criticize it, including myself, over the years, and it just proves everyone wrong. At the start, people said it was mushy, people said, you know, the wave didn't break, and at the end of the day, people are getting barreled at Nazare, you know, like, it just keeps on reinventing itself, and paddling Nazare is as challenging as it gets, you know, like positioning-wise, how you ride it. Obviously, you're not, I mean, I got barreled there this year on a 10-6, but the way Nazare beats, it's just different. But it is the biggest wave in the world, undisputed, you know. It has its place. It definitely has its place in horse surfing. It definitely has its place in mainstream surfing. They're the biggest waves of the year. I've always ridden in Nazare. And for me, I'm a part of the circus, you know? I'm a piece in the circus. I enjoy it. I love riding huge waves. I love towing. I love paddling. I love surfing slabs. And, you know, it doesn't need to be one or the other, you know? People kind of try to put you in a box and say, oh yeah, you're a tow surfer. Oh yeah, you're a QS surfer. Oh yeah, you're a CT surfer. For me, it's all about being the most complete as I can be, you know? And for me, for my sponsors, for my career, coming from Portugal, having a big presence in Nazare is essential. For myself and for my surroundings, which is, people say it's not important. People say, yeah, it's only about me, what I want to do. But no, you also have to please the people around you. If not, you're not a professional. So Nazare is important. Nazare is a big focus for me. I have a lot of fun with it. But who knows? The next day I might be getting barreled, and that's what differentiates me to the others, because I'm versatile, you know, and I want to be versatile. I want to keep doing contests when they appear. It's all about putting priorities, you know, and this year Nazare was a big priority. I wanted to win the contest. I won the contest. Next year, maybe I'll put something else on the priority list, and that's how it is, you know. You got to be versatile, you got to be diverse, and you got to make it happen. Anything is paddleable. Anything is paddleable. It's just a matter how much you want to risk, you understand? For me, like, it gets to a point where the risk is not worth it. Like, no one's gonna pay your bills, no one will support you. The moment you are injured, the moment you're severely injured, no one is gonna support you, you know? Like, that's the reality of the sport. You're only worth while you're active, you know? Like, as sad as it sounds, we don't have any, our sponsors don't give us any, you know, insurance policies or anything, you know? Like, if I'm injured, I'm by myself, you know? So it's really that. For me, big wave surfing is pushing the limit without pushing it too far, and not let ego come in the way. I've had some severe injuries over the years where I was a kid, I wanted to prove myself, and I've really put everything on the line. These days, I'm almost 32 years old. I think a lot clearer, I act a lot clearer, and for me there's a clear line when it gets too big to paddle and, you know, towing starts. Obviously towing, you know, there's a big risk as well. If you fall on a huge wave like I fell this year, you know, like you break a bone on your shoulder. But at least there's not a 90% chance of you getting cleaned up by a 100-foot wave, you know? And who knows? Like concussions, broken bones, you know, the list is endless of things that can happen. And as I said, I want to ride the biggest wave in the world. I want to progress my skills as much as I can. I want to progress my sport and leave my name at the end, but I want to survive and come home to my family and live a healthy life. I mean, aerial game in big wave surfing is something that has been fast progressing over the last couple of years. People doing huge airs in huge waves, something I'm lacking behind. I've been more focused on, you know, riding crazy lines, riding the biggest wave, and looking for the barrel. Yeah, it's just a lot of risk, man. It's a lot of risk. It's a lot of risk. You know, you see a guy like Jamie Mitchell trying to pull into a medium-sized day during the WSL Challenge and breaking his back. You know, that could have been it for him. You know, that could have been it. He could have been sitting in a wheelchair forever. So I'm cautious. I'm definitely cautious. I'm not crazy. I want to push my limits, but I really listen to my instinct. When it's the right movement, when it's the time to go, when it's the time not to go, you know? That's the way it should be. But yeah, progression is happening right now, man. Bigger waves, bigger airs, bigger barrels. People Groms want to be like the World Tour surfer. People Groms want to be like, you know, Felipe Toledo, doing big airs, surfing small waves. It takes a lot to really step outside of your comfort zone and surf big waves. You know, there's a lot of risk involved. Obviously, there are kids that do want to go down that path, and they do look up to me, and you know, they want to ride barrels. But yeah, I think big wave surfing is something very distant to the reality of the normal surfers, you know. And I think big wave surfing is more appealing to the mainstream and the core surfers, but it's very distant, you know. People do not want to surf the next big wave in Nazare, you know. Some people want, but not the majority, you know. So, but it's fine, you know. Like, for me, the most important is giving back to the community in one way or another, you know. And obviously inspiring people, being respected amongst the community, being respected amongst the mainstream, and leaving a legacy, you know, that people can grab if they want to, you know.